over to the offensive side of the ball, this is the guy that I'm really most intrigued by. Zayion Cotton, the tight end out of Grenada. This is a guy that, again, I've talked about before. I think State's going to have, or he's going to have an opportunity to contribute early at State because of the need at the tight end position. You're losing Sadu, who was sort of your H-back type guy, a slot tight end, more of the receiving threat, not much of a blocker. But within this offense, that's fine. You can have guys like that and be perfectly successful in that way. That's the role that you are losing off the team, frankly, because you don't have anybody else stepping in who can obviously fill that. You do have Sam West coming back, who showed some flashes for you last season here and there, but that's kind of it. Obviously, Riley Williams comes in as a transfer who has had flashes throughout his career, but has not consistently shown it. You've lost a few guys to the portal, which I think it was kind of more working through the group there, maybe a little bit of processing on some of them. You have some other freshmen coming in, guys who are maybe more traditional tight ends, whereas Cotton is a guy who really played wide receiver in high school, was mostly used in that type of a role. But having a guy that's a big-bodied weapon to work over the middle of the field who can get involved here or there, I don't think is a bad thing. Now, just like I talked about with Nickerson, there's a case of getting the body right and, is he ready to be a true college defensive end? For Cotton, getting him right to the point that he's ready to step in and be a regular contributor in the passing game while also handling some of the blocking responsibilities. Because even though you don't need him to be a great blocker within this offense, it'd be ideal, but you don't need him. You don't need him to be able to go head up against the defensive end. It's more, can you block linebackers and safeties? That's really what you need him to be able to do. Some guys struggle to do that. And if that's the case, all right, well, we're just going to put another receiver on the field, right? Because what are you really adding for us if you can't even do that? How quickly can he get up to par on being able to do that? But I think he's going to have an opportunity because State needs guys to step up at tight end. And I think having a big weapon in that position can be really valuable. Lebby has had guys like that before. Brayden Willis at Oklahoma. Obviously, Sadu, I think the idea was to get there, and he just never fully materialized the way you would have liked. But he caught like 5 touchdowns this year, 4 or 5, and showed flashes when he did get those opportunities. Obviously, Kenny Yeboah at Ole Miss back a few years ago had some big games for the Rebels within this system. You can use the tight end and get those guys involved in the passing game quite a bit. Lebby does like to do that. Cotton is sort of the guy, can you mold him? So, again, what does he look like coming out of the spring? Has he gone and reshaped his body already? Is he showing that he is ready to step in and contribute in that way right away? Those are going to be the big things to watch with him. But if he has shown that, he's going to have a great opportunity to contribute. And it's someone I definitely want to see in the spring. How does it get used? Especially, look, if you can have, for a younger quarterback in Camario, if you can have a tight end that you can get involved in the passing game consistently, that helps you out a lot. So that's definitely a guy I want to watch. J.J. Hill at running back. And we talked a lot about him earlier in the week because the running back position is an area where, it's interesting for State because you've got the veteran leader that's your clear number one in Fluff Bothwell. But after Fluff, what else do you have at running back? You've got Xavier Gayden back. He has shown flashes, had the chance at a bigger role last year. Did play a bigger role, but didn't take advantage of those extra opportunities that he got last year. Doesn't mean he can't get better. Really, this position as a whole, as I talked about earlier in the week, it's a spot we want to watch closely because who's going to be that number 2? But that was kind of one of the points that I was getting at is there's a wide open opportunity. And really you could go 2 guys here. You could talk about Jaden or JJ or Cooper Crosby. Both freshmen coming in are going to have an opportunity because you have nothing proven behind Fluff. Jaden has not yet taken the reins as the clear number 2, clear counterpart. Colin Wilson, we just haven't seen him. Gotten a few reps, gotten a few carries. He's not gotten enough playing time to know what we have in that guy. Both these freshmen coming in as 2 very talented players for State, 2 guys that are high 3 stars, really could be 4-star players. I think maybe some services did have them as 4 stars. they're going to have the opportunity. And not to sell Cooper short, obviously a very explosive player with the ball in his hands, very fast player who, look, to be honest, if Gaden or Wilson don't take over as that true counterpart to Fluff, where Fluff is sort of the physical downhill type runner, if you're looking for a complimentary back, maybe Cooper is the guy that if he can come in and take advantage, he's going to get those reps. That said, J.J. Hill is sort of the guy that I think everybody's looked at like, man, when he gets to college, he's going to be able to make an impact. And another tough physical runner. Obviously, look, not the breakaway speed that maybe you want, but has more than enough speed to be explosive in the rushing game as well. But a guy who can also just, you hand him the ball off and he's just going to go make plays. He's going to continue to fight forward contact. And that's something that I think matters within this rushing game when we still have questions about the offensive line. That's where it kind of all comes together is State's O-line is not one where we can yet confidently say they're going to get it blocked up well up front on a down-by-down basis. I'm hoping they are. But we don't yet know that. We've had 2 years within this offense, 2 different O-line coaches. It's been the same problem. And frankly, they were worse at it this past year. At least 2 years ago, they got to a point where the run game was competent from a blocking standpoint. This year, not so much. Are the new faces they brought in going to be the guys that fix that? We'll see. That's the other big thing to watch in the spring is a major storyline, which is definitely something we'll get into at a later date. But if that group is not going to just be road graders up front, you can't not be able to run the football within this offense. This is an offense where if you get the looks to run, you need to be able to hand the football off and get effective, consistent yardage. And if you're not getting the blocks well up front, that means your running back better be a dude. I think Fluff at his best is a dude. J.J. Hill, based on what he did in high school, was a dude. Can he be that dude at the college level? And his skill set is a physical break tackle runner who can just sort of make some things happen. Gives him an opportunity within this group for sure. So definitely a guy that we want to see. But again, I don't want to sell Cooper Crosby short. I think that both of those guys at running back, you can really put them 1 and 2 or 1A, 1B. Shout out to Jeff Collins and the Psycho defense as guys that really it's equal opportunity, in my opinion, coming out. Last guy we'll talk about, I wanted to go to the receiver position because State's got an interesting group of receivers coming in that they signed. I like the class that they have at wide receiver. I think it's a really interesting group. But only one of those guys enrolling early. And Trey here with the question, is West a better blocker than Traore? I feel like yes. I tend to think so, and I've been trying to go back and watch more of this a little bit, but West early in the season, I know if you got him out in space, he was struggling with that. There were times that they would try to get him as a lead blocker on like a screen pass, and it didn't work out the way they wanted it to. But I will say, whenever they got into 2 tight end sets, West was the guy who they were having out there. And West was also the guy that they would most use attached to the line, get him down to a 3-point stance. Whichever guy you're comfortable doing that with as your tight end, that kind of tells you who's your best blocker. And Trey saying, I think he's more comfortable attached. Yeah, which, again, that's an opportunity going back to Zayion Cotton. If West can be your guy that is the attached line of scrimmage tight end and be your inline blocker, you can then have Cotton as your H-back type, which, frankly, look, that's probably what's going to be Cotton's going to be throughout his career. Guys like him, unless he just puts on a ton of weight and becomes just an incredible blocker, which some guys, look, they can develop that in college for sure. I feel like, though, a lot of the guys who end up being the best blocking tight ends, it's more like they were athletic offensive linemen, but, who just were not fully up to weight. But those two will have an opportunity to work alongside each other. It's just whether or not Cotton's ready for it. But, getting back to the receiver, some of those guys aren't coming in. Jaden Creation's not coming in. John Crumpton's not coming in until the summer, that is. And we've talked about receivers being a spot where, hey, there's opportunity. You know what you got in Ant Evans. You've got your top receiver back, big-time weapon out of the slot, fantastic. Marquise Johnson coming in as a big-time guy on the outside, deep threat, good pickup from Missouri as a transfer. That's one of your starters for sure. Outside of that, Aiden Williams is a returning starter. And I thought Aiden Williams, I do think he played consistently for State. I thought he did a good job of being physical as a receiver when the few opportunities he got. I thought he was the best blocker State had in that receiving core last year. Didn't make big plays. Was not a guy that they were targeting. Was not a guy that they were ready to get regularly involved. Frisco McGee is someone I think we're all very excited about because, I mean, we've seen the potential the last couple of years in like spring practices, right? Where, I know Chad Bumpus always talked really highly about him as, man, this guy's really special. And last year he makes the game-winning touchdown catch in the spring game. They're sharing highlights to the social media page of him making crazy grabs. And then he just doesn't get on the field. Gets involved in the spring game, catches a big touchdown. Guy does that, there's going to be a ton of hype. And I think Frisco definitely has the ability to go and be the guy, but he still has to show it. So there's opportunity at receiver. And even though Levy typically doesn't rotate that position a ton, there's opportunity for someone to step in. And you've got, like I've said, a very talented young group of guys in. And while I think Creation and Crumpton are the two freshman receivers that have gotten the most discussion, I don't want to leave out Camden Capehart either, who might be Brennan Thompson 2.0, if we're being completely honest. But that's another guy that's not coming in until the summer. The guy who is coming in early is Keymian Henderson out of Texas, another high 3-star that State landed, former Arkansas commitment, big frame, 6'4", 190, and a guy who has been best as a deep threat throughout his career. We've been talking, can State get that guy who's the big frame receiver, just the true prototypical, what you imagine when you think of an outside wide receiver? And, Aiden Williams could be that. Frisco McGee can be that as well. Keymian also brings that. And having that catch radius is a big thing. And, for me, it's just the fact that you got a freshman who's in the spring. You got opportunities at receiver. I'm really intrigued to see, can he make a statement early? Because those other guys haven't fully taken advantage yet. And we've seen Levy's willing to play young receivers, right? Obviously, Mario Craver became a starter for Mississippi State as a true freshman. So you get chances like that if you can step in and make an impact. Him coming into the spring does, I think, give him a leg up on those other guys that are stepping in. And there's a nice opportunity for Henderson there to be a really nice impact player. He's got the skill set. Again, a big play threat, big frame, got good enough speed. He can be a good guy for State. So big opportunity. I'm very curious to see what he can do at receiver. So, it ended up being a pretty good high school class, all things considered, for State. They closed really well. And you have a lot of these guys stepping in that I think are going to have opportunities to make an impact early. Definitely going to want to be keeping close tabs on these guys as we go throughout spring practices.